Hi guys, Harry here from the Art Gear Guide. Thank you so much for joining me today. Sorry about the noise in the background there. That's just my neighbours. She's out cutting the grass, and there's nothing really I can do about that. But I wanted to do a review today of the Prismacolor markers. Now, my good friend Rhonda, who works at Colour magazine, the Kullberg magazine, which I write monthly reviews for. I was talking to her, I think it might even be about 2 years ago, about a year or 2 years ago. I was talking to her about how much I wanted to get my hands on a set of Prismacolor markers, because I had the pencils and I had seen a lot of illustrators using Prismacolor markers in America, like Disney illustrators and people like that, and Marvel and illustrators like that, really well-known illustrators. And as a result of that, I'd always wanted to get a set and try them, and I was fortunate enough that Rhonda was able to do that for me and send them over to me, because they were really expensive. For any of the sets that were available here in the UK on Amazon and stuff like that, they were super expensive. In the States, much cheaper. And but with regards to set sizes and prices, as always, I will have those over on my written review, because as the prices change, I can change them over on there. If I start talking about prices here in the video, then it's going to be outdated 6 months down the line when somebody watches this video and I say a price, and they're going to come back and say, well, they're not that price anymore. So I always do things like this, talk about set sizes and prices over on the written review, because there I can edit and change as and when they change on Amazon. And for the most part, that's where I get my price and structure from, because Amazon's global. For me to go around all the different big franchise art stores like Blick's and Jerry's Artorama and Michael's and Hobby Lobby and the ones over here in the UK, and then try to find ones in Europe and ones in Australia and stuff like that, it would take me much longer than what it does now to create a video. So it's just easier to do the pricing structure from Amazon, because it's a global position that anybody can go and buy from in most countries. So let's get into the set. And as you can see here, this is a 24 set that I was able to get, and it's the brush and bullet nib set. Now I'll get into the nibs that are available in a second, but as you can see here, so you slide the little cardboard slide off here, and on the back there's information about the colours that are inside the set. And as you can see here, there's some information down at the bottom here in different languages as well. So I think there's 3 different languages here. And that's really about it. It just shows you. Now I'm going to show you how this little case works as well. So like I say, the 24 markers come in this canvas case. And on the side here, on the spine of the case, you have like a little carry handle. Or if you don't want to carry it like that, there's also another little loop here that you can just put your finger through when you're carrying it, or to hang it up on somewhere. It's got a zip, open and close, and the zip is fairly sturdy. I mean, for what it is here, you know, it's a fairly sturdy zip, but it's got this nice toggle on it as well, so you're not messing about with zips if your dexterity isn't that great. But when you open it, you can see the markers inside. They're all secure with these elastic bands here. But this carry handle on the spine also is, you can see here, I've got images coming up on the screen here because I find it easier to take photographs and show you than just like try to push it up close to the camera. There's a toggle here on the inside. And the reason the toggle is there is so that you fold the set up like this and pull in on the toggle. hopefully you can see this here, pull in on the toggle like a drawstring and adjust it to whatever, like if you want them to be like sitting straight up like this, or if you want it to be a little bit more on like a 15-degree angle or something like that. But that's what the drawstring does. It folds this in so that it's not just a carry case anymore. Now you've got like an object for helping you select the markers. Rather than having them all over the table, this is a really nice, simple, easy way to get your markers and put them back in there so that you're good to go. So I like that. I mean, there's a lot of different marker companies now. They all, with the exception of a few, a lot of them have come up with these types of cases that double as like selection methods as well. So I like that. Now let's take a look at the actual. Now let's take a look at the actual marker. So I'm just going to lift one of them out here and show you. So the barrel it's a round barrel. Written along one side we have Prismacolor Premier. Because it's a round barrel, the caps, the lids, have these little wedges protruding out from them to prevent the marker from rolling off your desk. On the opposite side of the barrel where Prismacolor Premier is written, we have the color name in 2 different languages, and there's also a number here which corresponds to the color that's inside the marker. It's an alcohol-based marker as well. I forgot to mention that. If you look at the design on the marker, okay, so on one side here we have this wavy line, and on the other side we've just got this flat band that goes all the way around it, and that depicts what type of nib you have on either side. So where the wavy line is, this is where the brush nib is, and where the fine line is where the fine nib is. Now, so let's just take a look at these nibs. So the brush nib here is quite long, and you can see, and when using it, it's quite a flexible nib. Now, I'm not too sure whether that's got anything to do with just the way it's set in the barrel, that it's maybe, it could be maybe pushed further in and not be as flexible, but it is a very, very flexible nib. The fine nib is quite unique. If you look at a lot of bullet nibs on markers and what have you, they tend to be round. This one is almost like pointed. It's very, very detailed, and when I show you the swatch that I've done a couple of different marks using this fine nib, and you'll be able to see the difference in widths that you can get with it. I'm not doing a comparison video, although I will do soon, but what I would say is that if you're wanting to get hold of Prismacolor markers, if you really want to use them, and the only type of marker you're after is a brush nib with a fine nib on the other opposite side, the closest alternative that I can think of is the Winsor & Newton Pro markers, which have the bullet nib and then obviously the brush marker. Unfortunately, they're 2 separate markers because those markers have chisel nibs on the other side. Now the Prismacolor Premier markers, they come out in 2 formats as well, and I would love to get hold of the chisel format also, because I believe that the chisel nib on the Prismacolor Premier marker is unlike any other chisel nib on the market. There's something, it looks really unique. It looks rounded, yet though it's got that chisel look to it as well. So it's one of those products that I would just love to get hold of and be able to review at a later date. But for now, all I'm reviewing is the brush and bullet nib. And if that's all you're looking for, I would say that the Winsor & Newton Pro marker or brush marker is almost identical in terms of nibs. You'll see some images coming up here, and you can see there yourself that they are so similar, and it's the same with the flexibility on the brush on the brush nibs for both of these markers. Their flexibility is almost identical. So as you can see here, I've got my swatch of all the colours that were in this 24 set, and you can see here it's a nice selection. Now, one of the reasons it took me so long to get round to reviewing these is because, as you can see, it is a limited palette, and I was kind of like at a loss as to what I was going to do, because if I was going to do something like a Marvel character or a Star Wars character, I needed to have more colours, I needed to have greys and what have you, which I just didn't have. And so when I done my review not that long back of the Artex acrylic pens, I did a Simpson piece, and that gave me the idea to do something quite blocky as well, because the Simpsons are quite blocky. There's no blending or anything like that. It's kind of like just one colour, maybe a couple of little highlights here and there. And so that gave me the idea to do a similar type genre of art using the Prismacolor markers, and I'll show you the artwork that I did with these in a second. But that was one of the things that held me up, and that was purely just down to the limited palette. But what I do want to show you here, which I think is excellent, what Prismacolor have done. So this is the blending that I've done down here at the bottom using the brush nib, and you can see here it's quite a nice blend. I'm using Hahnemühle Bristol smooth paper for this, which is beautiful paper for markers, absolutely gorgeous. Now on the opposite side here, I had this idea. I wonder how close the Prismacolor Premier pencils are to the colours of the markers, because the names, the colour names on the markers are the same as the colour names on the pencils, but the numbers are different. So for example, you can see here the orange down at the bottom, and you can see the orange Prismacolor pencil and the orange Prismacolor marker. Now the Prismacolor pencil, the number for that is PC918, and the number for the orange is PB16. That's P for Papa, B for Bravo, 16. I'm not too sure why the numbers are so very different, but they are. But nevertheless, as you can see here, the marker colours coincide very, very well with the pencils. I also done the same here with the Spanish orange, and you can see again the pencil and the marker are so very, very similar. I'm sure if I went through all the other Prismacolor pencils that I had, the same type of thing would be true for these other colours. And I just think that's a really, really good thing, because if you happen to have the full set of Prismacolor markers, doesn't matter what chisel nib, whatever chisel nib you prefer to use, and you also have the full set of the Prismacolor Premier pencils, when it comes down to you doing like a coloured pencil marker piece, and you're working on your piece with your markers, and then you come in with your coloured pencils for detail, it's going to be so simple for you. It's going to be really, really easy, because you're just going to have, you can reach for the same pencils that you used on markers. Whereas when you're using something like Copic or anything like that, and then you want to go and get a pencil, even if you use Prismacolor pencils, you've got to kind of like get scrap bits of paper and make sure that the markers are the same or similar to the pencils and all that. With this ecosystem, all that's already done for you, which I think is excellent. And I think as an artist, to have both of those sets, you would be absolutely good to go, and there wouldn't really be anything else that you would need if that's the type of medium that you enjoy working in, which for me, I love marker and colour pencil art, purely and simply because you've got the speed of laying down the colour with the marker, which also applies to things like, pan pastels, that there's a lot of speed involved in that. You're not messing about too much. But with marker, you get that colour down, and then you just come back in and you refine your work with your pencils. And for me, I just love doing artwork using both those mediums. So as you can see here, this is the piece that it then completed. It's a Pokemon piece. I don't even know the proper names of the characters, and I'm sorry about that, guys. But it, as you can see here, it's a really bright and blocky type artwork. Manga and anime are an art form on their own. They're absolutely beautiful. I love looking at the illustrations from manga and anime. But as you can see, like things like shading and what have you, it's fairly simple. It's not too difficult. And so because I had that limited palette, I used it. Now, there were a couple of colours that I needed to choose, and I used the Winsor & Newton Pro Markers because they are so similar with regards to the brush nib as well. So I would definitely say that if you really, really want to get hold of Prismacolor Premier Markers, you can do that on Amazon. If you have a friend in America, it might be a good idea to send them the money, ask them if they will buy it for you and ship it over to you, and obviously you pay the shipping, because I think even doing it that way, I think it still works out a little bit cheaper than some of the sets that I've seen on Amazon. But the other issue that I had with these markers was the flow of ink. Now, I don't hear a lot of people talk about that when they're reviewing markers, but let me try and explain to you without doing a comparison video. I don't want to go down that line. Okay, so I've got a few different markers here, but what I want to try and illustrate here is when I talk about the flexibility of the brush nibs, my personal preference for markers is a brush nib and ideally like a bullet nib. So this combination here, the Prismacolor have, which is the brush nib and the bullet nib, I like that a lot. It gives me everything I need in one marker. There's a few markers like that, but not many. Most of the time you'll get a brush nib and a chisel nib, and if you want the bullet nib, a lot of companies do two different types of pens. So if you want the bullet nib, you'll have to get a different pen from the same company. Ardex do that, and Ardex do that with their pens. So you've got a brush nib and a chisel nib, and then you get a bullet nib pen with a chisel nib. So I do like the combination, but for me, here's the problem with the Prismacolor pens, and it doesn't seem to be with all of them, but out of the 24 that I had this issue with quite a few of them. So let me zoom in here, and I hope that you can see. First of all, you'll be able to see the flexibility here. The flexibility on these nibs is really nice, and you can see there, I hope you can see in any case, let me just zoom in, just how juicy, look at the way that the ink flows out of that. Really, really nice. And the coverage that the brush nib from the Prismacolor gives you is, again, really, really nice. There's no streaking or anything like that. But if you look at what, when I'm doing like these circles, it looks like the nib is running out. You can see on the outskirts that the lay down doesn't seem to be that great until you come back over it again. And it almost seems like that the ink flow, there's a problem with the ink flow, and you've got to recharge your pen again. So in the midst of doing like a large piece, and you can hear that rubbing. And this is on, like I say, the Hahnemühle Bristol Smooth. You can see as well on the end of the nib, you can see the way, do you know the way when you get an ice lolly and you suck the bottom of it and you suck all the juice out and then you're just left with the ice? That's the best way I can describe what's happening with these pens. Again, look, you can see there, but you'll see that the ink does flow into it. It'll come back into it, but I don't seem to have this issue with many other markers. It just seems to be with these ones that if you're doing a big area, you got to give it a little bit of time to for the ink flow to come back down into the brush nib. Let me just show you. So with the Winsor & Newton, I have the same issue as well, and so I'm wondering if it's anything to do with the actual nib and the way that the ink flows into the nib. But if you have a look here, you can hear that it's exactly the same. That almost sounds like it's dry, like the pen has ran out, but it hasn't. There's plenty of ink in there. You can see when I press down on it, you can see how juicy it is. There's plenty of ink in the pen. It just has this really, really dry, rubby feel. As opposed to, I'm not even sure if this one. So the flexibility on the Copics, the brush nibs, it's not as flexible as the Prismacolor or the Winsor & Newton. Now, for me personally, I prefer a slightly smaller brush nib. I prefer for me personally, with the Prismacolor and the Winsor & Newton pen, I think it's just a little bit too flexible. Let me see if I can. Let me just zoom out slightly because it's starting to fight for focus here. So you can hear you've got that same dry noise, but it's not giving me that run out, like, you know, that dry feeling where I've got to come back and go over it multiple times. The style file, I've not used these markers in a long time, but they're a marker that I like. You can see there that brush nib, again, very much smaller than the Prismacolor. Same noise, but there's not that appearance of it running out. It just the flow of ink is just much better. And again, you know, it's still a very, you can see there the ink flow coming out of it. But there's no part of it at all that looks like it's drying out. And finally, with the Artex, again, a very different. I'm going to do a proper comparison review of all the brush nib markers that I have, and show you the different types at a later date. But again, you can see here when I'm pushing in, it's quite a flexible marker or brush nib, very juicy. And again, there's no part of the marker that's drying out. It's giving me a consistent flow of ink. So the only thing that I can put that down to is the connection between the reservoir that the ink comes through into the brush marker, and then there's some, I don't know, a backlog or something of the ink, because the flow in the Prismacolor and the Winsor & Newton brush nibs are just not there. It's almost like you've got to play catch up. You've got to stop at a certain point and allow the nib to refill back up again, and then off you go. And as I illustrated there, it's got nothing to do with ink levels. There's plenty of ink in both of those markers, the Winsor & Newton one and the Prismacolor one. It just, I don't know what it is, but I just wanted to highlight it because it is something that I picked up working with the markers. Now, it's not really a deal breaker or anything like that. It's just something that I found when I was doing my testing and my demonstrating on the artwork, and I just wanted to address it and highlight it to you guys. That's all part and parcel of a review. I'll tell you all the different things that I found during my time using it, which is why it's so important to do artwork as well, because doing swatches, which is what I used to do right at the very beginning, and then lots of people would say, Harry, you know, doing these little swatches, that's all very well and good, but you really need to put the thing through the test of doing some artwork with it. And whoever made those comments at the time was absolutely right, absolutely 100% right. And that's the reason I do the artwork now, because it does give me a very, very good understanding of the product. And that was one of the issues that I had with the Prismacolor marker. Okay guys, so that's my review of the Prismacolor markers. There's a lot to like about these markers, there really is. Unfortunately, if you're outside of the US, they're really quite expensive. I know the prices everywhere for everything has gone up, but for Prismacolor markers, they always were expensive in the UK. They do come open stock. I know that if you go into the likes of Blick's or Michael's or Jerry's Artorama, they have like racks where you can purchase the markers. But unless, I'm not too sure what the situation is getting markers open stock to the UK or anywhere else for that matter outside of the US. I'm not too sure what the setup would be for that. So that is something that you would have to bear in mind when you're, if you wanted to go down and buy these markers. I think the American artists are very, very lucky in that they have Prismacolor in general, because for me, the Prismacolor Premier pencils are gorgeous. The Prismacolor Premier markers are nice, and especially in conjunction with the pencils, I think it's a great marriage, and I think it's a great ecosystem that they have. They have, obviously, Prismacolor have got pastels as well that you can use, that are all color coded exactly the same as the pencils and the markers, and so all round that ecosystem that Prismacolor have is a really, really nice system, and one that any artist would be chomping at the bits to try and gather up the entire collection. But for artists outside of the US, it does become an expense thing, and it's not for me to say what's expensive and what's not expensive, because affordability is very much a personal thing. What I can afford, somebody else could afford 10 times over, and maybe somebody else may not be able to afford it. So it's not for me to say what's a good price and what's a bad price. But over on my written review, I'll have all the different sets that you can purchase and the different prices for here, the US and Europe. And if we can, I'll put some prices up for Australia as well. But Australia, you guys have got a really bad deal, because there's so many art products that are so super expensive for Australian artists. I don't know what's going on over there, or how they can get away with the prices being so high on some of the products that the Australian artists get. I'm not too sure what's going on there, but anyway, like I say, prices and sets will all be over in the written review. I really enjoyed using them, and I would really love to get hold of the chisel nib Prismacolor markers, because like I say, they are totally unique. I don't think there's another marker that has the same type chisel nib that the Prismacolor marker has. And I forgot to mention as well, as you can see here on the swatch, the thin lines underneath, so the block color is done with the brush nib. The two thin lines underneath is done with that that fine nib. And as you can see there, you can get really super fine detail with that bullet nib, and then you can get slightly thicker lines with it as well by turning it on its side, as you would do like a pencil if you're doing a little bit of shading. So with the Prismacolor brush nib and bullet nib, it's a very versatile marker. But I have seen, and I know a lot of people say this, that that chisel nib on the Prismacolor markers is incredibly versatile. You can get lots of different line widths and what have you from that one nib. So it is something that I would really like to get a look at before I make any like comment on a comparison video, which marker I think is the best or anything like that. I would definitely like to try the chisel nibs before I go down that road, and hopefully if I'm able to get hold of the chisel nib, then I'll do an entire comparison video of all the different brush nib markers, including Ohuhu and Artx and there's so many, Art and Fly, Artify, Winsor Newton, Copic, Style File. There's so many different ones to do, and it's a minefield if you're an artist starting out and you want to get into marker art and color pencil art. What marker do you go for? What pencils do you go for? All that type of thing. I'll do a video about that later on. Anyway, I'm rambling on here. I know I am. I'm really sorry, guys. I look forward to seeing you all again very soon, and I will have an update video on that art project that I'm working on. If you don't know what I mean, I'll have a link to it down below. You can go across, watch that video and see what I'm going on about, and like I say, I'll have an update video coming up very soon. Thanks very much, guys. I look forward to seeing you all again in the next review. Thanks, bye.